So, when I was going through the educational philosophies of Burgess, Newman, and Whalen, I saw that, like a lot of folks have already mentioned, they had some similarities, some differences. And the similarities seem to be that um, they all placed some emphasis on the importance of both intellectual and moral development. Of course, like Newman had more importance on moral development, but they all seem to place at least some emphasis on developing in a multifaceted way for students. And they all were a part of that shift from just educating for religious or for the gentry into advocating for uh, broader education for more purposes. And all of them have they recognize that institutions had a role to play, that there was contribution to be made to society at large. And as I was reading through um, those three different works, that actually was a light bulb moment for me. Because as Dr. Byron was saying in class, that we need to examine history to make sure that we understand where we've come from so we can understand how to affect change. Um, because we work in higher education, I think sometimes there's the assumption that, yes, of course, institutions and education has a role to play in society, but that wasn't always necessarily the case. And now we're coming full circle where the value and the role that public education, not just higher education, the value and roles being kind of called into question. And public sentiment isn't what it always, or not always, what it has been. And we're kind of climbing an uphill battle to affect public sentiment. So I thought that was a light bulb moment, and maybe um, a good reason to make sure that we continue to examine history to understand some of those themes. So that's the ways that I've found similarities, and some of the differences that I saw with their philosophies were, of course, as so many folks have pointed out, that Burgess was, I like that term bougie, that his vision was more about creating leaders, and his model was more aligned with what we think of as classic university models, with emphasizing research and advanced study, kind of what we would think of as graduate study. Of course, we went over some of that in class. Newman mentioned in one of my comments, or in my comment, that Newman equals noble. So he was focused on cultivating intellect and moral character, and really saw the pursuit of knowledge as an end in and of itself. And Wayland kind of the philosophies resonated in different ways with me, with all of them. But I'm kind of Team Wayland in a way as well, with some of my cohort members. He emphasized, more practical education and making sure that students that went through institutions, he felt like they should have a more direct and practical use for what they were learning at institutions, for a role in society, something specific as a role in society. Um, and then, of course, some of the differences were about accessibility. So, who should be accessing education? And, you know, Burgess kind of suggested a centralized approach. And again, going back to cultivating leadership and maybe, I guess the term would be exclusive. And Newman was um, kind of leaning more along some of the, um, at the time, classical educational roots, looking at religious educational philosophy and emphasizing more universal access to education, and for universal for that time, but within a very structured and traditional education model um, for that time. We could say kind of going back to within their frameworks of that time. And Wayland was more advocating for a more a little decentralized and accessible approach. And again, going back to that, being more practical and having a use or utility for the education that someone was going to get to apply to a specific role that someone was going to have in a town or whatever they were going to be employed in. And so, applying this to today, I didn't find necessarily an at-large article or a scholarly article. I probably should have prepared that, but I did do a lot of deep diving on our institution's site. I spent a lot of time, I kind of really got into this and spent a lot of time looking at Santa Fe College's website and news and what was available for students and how this applied. And really looking at how there's a blend of a holistic and general kind of liberal arts approach, but also, as a community or state college, that practical, hands-on applied education as well. So as far as the holistic and well-rounded approach that Newman and to some extent Burgess would advocate for, there's a lot of programs, a lot of initiatives, definitely around leadership and student government and student leadership, emphasizing those programs for students, trying to speak to making well-rounded and civically minded students. So the two programs that stood out for me were the Social Justice Fair and the Alternative Spring Break for students. The Social Justice Fair is where students can learn about the connection between the social justice movements that are going on, contribute to societal change. I'm kind of reading some of the notes from the website, embody the college's commitment to community engagement and social responsibility. And the Alternative Spring Break is a opportunity for students to participate in meaningful community service while learning about natural and historical significance of Cumberland Island, Georgia. So this is a civic engagement and experiential learning opportunity that bridges both the educational setting and civic engagement. So they're doing, volunteer things and learning about nature and learning about biological science while they're doing these activities. So really connecting the dots for the students. And I believe that would be in line with some of those philosophies that Newman and to some extent Burgess had in mind. With Wayland, I really got into a deep dive of some of the practical applications that Santa Fe College had and programs and initiatives. Of course, STEAM, we've changed it from STEM to STEAM. So that's including the arts, blending, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And so that's actually a blend of Newman's idea of a more broad education and Wayland's idea of a practical education. Um, but then shifting more um, detail to Wayland, there's all kinds of things going on. There's an insurance and risk management showcase for folks who may be interested in going into the insurance and risk management field, um, and learning about careers and how they can, get credentials or go into a program to be in that field. There's emphasis on online courses that are available to make education more accessible. That actually speaks to, um, Newman and Wayland, but making sure that, we have certificate programs, continuing education programs that are more accessible to the public and not just students who sign up as, more, I won't say traditional, but more, fill out the application, become a student. These certificate programs and continuing education programs are more streamlined and short-term programs that are available online, um, and more accessible. But also for students who sign up as degree seeking or certificate seeking students, making sure those programs are online, kind of like we are in a hybrid program, and bringing education to more people as well. And then there's also a Find Your Vocation showcase that's going on, and making sure that the public knows about what kind of CTE programs are available. So many people just know about the AA programs and the BAS programs that are advertised, but really diving into what's available at the college has been informative for me, and connecting the dots from the past to the future, or past to the current, and then looking ahead to what we can do for the future. So that's what I got out of this assignment. And um, I thought it was really insightful for all three of them to be able to be thinking so far ahead, and we can learn lessons today.